Hello, all, and welcome to the Caregiver Support Series. All right, everyone, an important announcement. The Caregiver Support Series will now be released twice a month because my role in the community has started to pick up again. Yay! So, along those lines, I want to make sure you all know that I'm available for virtual education for individuals as well as groups. I have a variety of topics already available, and I can take suggestions to tailor a presentation to specific needs. This week, I will continue discussing the natural dying process by touching on what happens when eating and drinking stop. This can be one of the hardest, most emotional transitions for the patient's loved ones because food is love, food is bonding, food is what we celebrate with and sometimes cope with. But the desire for food dramatically changes as someone is declining towards the end of their life. I invite you to sit back with your favorite cold beverage and relax as I share with you some of the physical changes that the body goes through and how to manage those changes. As always, feel free to reach out to me with questions. In today's episode, words to describe will be focused specifically on food and when eating stops. My source for the majority of this episode is Tani Bhatti. She is a certified hospice and palliative care nurse who has spent most of her 40-year career focusing on improving end-of-life care. One thing that I love about her educational talks is that she focuses on the body's internal wisdom. The body knows how to prepare to shut down in a way that protects the person and promotes comfort as natural processes kick in at the end of life. In the education corner, I will talk about dehydration and when drinking stops, also touching on the risks of artificial hydration. In next week's episode, I'm focusing on behaviors associated with dementia and other neurological disturbances. Changes in eating often cause a lot of distress for families and caregivers. They often worry that their loved one is starving to death. Starving is a very emotionally charged word. It refers to someone who would eat and who wants to and desires food, but has none. Patients nearing the end of life rarely want food or feel hunger, and often just the smell of food is nauseating. This is the body's internal wisdom at work because it can't digest and process that food as it once could. So unfortunately, what can happen is that a loved one's best intentions in pushing food only creates more discomfort and conflict for the patient. Changes in eating can start days, weeks, months, even years before death. As a person starts to decline, their energy needs, their desire to eat, and their ability to digest and process food changes. Using a metaphor, think of a car that's on the highway versus a car that's in the garage. The car that's on the highway, on the move, needs gas. The car that's not moving much or at all doesn't need the same amount of fuel. Most often, a decline in nutritional intake is due to an overall decline, but other factors such as nausea, bowel changes, altered mental status, or pain in the mouth or throat can contribute to someone just not wanting to eat. A thorough assessment from a nurse is needed if a patient has sudden changes in their eating and drinking habits. When the body is not eating, it will start to use fat and muscle as an energy source. This process is called ketosis. In advanced cases of ketosis, like at the end of life, the nervous system response is dulled, which in turn makes the patient rarely feel pain, hunger, or thirst. It can also produce endorphins that give end-of-life patients this overall sense of well-being or even a mild euphoria. This is the body's internal wisdom at work. If food is forced at this point, it can interrupt that process and actually make the patient feel awful. Oftentimes, meat is the first food group that people no longer want, followed very closely by vegetables. Taste buds change, and sugar is one of the flavors that patients can still taste. I've seen people who have never really been fans of soda and suddenly really enjoy the flavor. I want to touch quickly on artificial nutrition. The topic of tube feeding and/or TPN often comes up when someone begins to have trouble swallowing. This becomes a benefit versus burden conversation. There are instances where artificial nutrition can actually speed up death. In cases of cancer, for instance, it can feed the cancer instead of the person. So the question becomes, are you feeding the body or are you feeding the disease? The matter of dehydration comes up shortly after someone stops eating, and it's just one more loss the loved ones have to deal with. You can still offer hydration even if a person can't hold the cup. Use a straw or a syringe. Wet the mouth with a mouth swab or a sponge. Use small ice chips. If a healthy person is dehydrated, it can be uncomfortable. Feeling thirsty, muscle cramps, and in very severe cases, seizures and confusion. But at the end of life, it is a natural process, and it's the body's internal wisdom. It contributes to the release of endorphins that promote comfort. If given IV hydration, the heart has to handle the extra fluids when it's already working very hard. The extra fluid can lead to an increase in swelling in the extremities, which then leads to awful bed sores. The increased fluid can also lead to congestion in the lungs, which causes shortness of breath and extra secretions. So what can we do? Continue to offer comfort food. Think about the texture and consistency of foods and offer ones that are easier to swallow and require less chewing. Make it an enjoyable social experience and change environments if possible. Offer small, frequent meals and nutritional supplements such as Ensure as snacks. Don't put too much on the plate, as that can seem overwhelming to a patient. As a reminder, supplements in pill or liquid form require a decent amount of food and fluid to be able to be absorbed. So if supplements are given on an empty stomach, the patient may end up throwing them right back up. As a caregiver, it's important to recognize this struggle for family and loved ones. Acknowledge that feeling of hopelessness during this stage. Identify that food is being rejected, not the person. I've seen adult children labor over recreating their parents' favorite food, and then they feel rejected and helpless when their parents refuse to eat it. Again, it's the food, not the person, that's being refused. My last nurse tips are to take cues from the patient. Do not force feed them. Offer, offer, offer all you want, but don't force someone to take in food or fluid. Encourage different ways to nurture them. I love how Tani says, feed the spirit when you can no longer feed the body. Have conversations that center around life review. Comb their hair. Listen to music together. Massage their hands and feet with lotion. Say prayers or read together. Encourage humor. Involve pets. Feed the spirit when you can no longer. Thanks for watching. This has been an episode of the Caregiver Support Series brought to you by Hospice of Northwest Ohio. Next week, we will focus on behaviors associated with dementia and other neurological disturbances.